Welcome to the review of the iPhone 7 Plus from Apple by AZ Tech Ninja.
Alrighty, so as we mentioned in our unboxing video, there's not a whole lot new, but there is a whole lot new. It's kind of a oxymoron. The iPhone 7 Plus looks very similar to its older sibling, the iPhone 6s Plus. If you just saw them sitting on the table, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. However, you will notice that the new iPhone 7 Plus does not have the headphone jack. It is slightly thinner. The buttons stick out a little bit more, which is a nice advantage. I think that's better. I do like how the buttons stick out a little bit more. It's easier to see what they are in the dark.
Or just feel for them.
Yeah, so it's a better improvement. And it has a dual speaker system setup. You have the speaker down here and a speaker up here that shares the speaker with the actual headset speaker. And on the back, you'll see that most of the cosmetic changes are. You'll notice that there's a new dual lens 12.1 megapixel camera. Quad flash, I believe that's quad flash. Yep. Quad flash, and the antenna bands have been moved from the center, outer center, to now the very edge, which I think is a better design. It's an evolution, but I think it looks better on the edge like that. So, definitely an improvement when it comes to design, but unfortunately, I don't think it's enough of an improvement when you consider all the competition out there. So, like I said, let's start with the base, the first complaint, which it's what it's going to be: lack of the headphone jack. When you have a phone that's pretty much keeping with the design that you've had for 3 years, you expect some, a little bit of evolution by the third year, and that's to be expected. However, I feel like Apple's playing it safe, like I mentioned, and they did the very minimal evolution, especially when compared to the top of the line Android phone out right now, which is the S7 Edge, which we're going to be reviewing next week. I don't want to go into that, but this is a phone that's been pretty much at the top of its game as far as design.
Keeping in mind this is not the Note 7, this is the S7 Edge.
S7 Edge. Now, I don't want to go into that too much, but the problem is there's so much competition. Android's at the top of its game. You have the new Pixel XL coming out, or actually is out if you can get it. And, you have all these Android phones that are doing unique things with their hardware. And here we have a 1080p screen, IPS, not AMOLED. You have big old chins, no edge screen, which the edge screen some people don't like, so let's not talk about that, but it's the same resolution as before. You have your same, chins, and they took the headphone jack away, saying that there wasn't enough room, but yet, I'm pretty sure if competition can cram all this into a smaller base with the same size screen that's better quality, bigger battery, I'm pretty sure Apple could have put the headphone jack in there if they wanted to.
There was a lot of speculation towards that due to the factor that there are various people that have opened up this phone, like iFixit and stuff like that. But they basically said that it's supposed to be a barometric pressure release area, which I find to be a lie.
But whatever. But it's not the biggest deal. Like, honestly, I didn't miss the headphone jack that much. The adapter it comes with makes up for it, I guess, but it is kind of a little inconvenience. I believe the adapter does work with the Square and those accessories, but like I said, it's an inconvenience, and it's something. If your phone is this big and has this big of a chin, you expect it to have enough room for that port. That's what I'm saying. So that's the first complaint. Second complaint is with the speaker setup. It's not really a complaint. It's just something that surprised me that Apple overlooked. And basically, with the dual speaker setup, the treble seems to be a little bit unbalanced out of the box. If you're watching a YouTube video, any spoken word from the YouTube video.
Oh, this is awful. Try it.
This isn't the best example, but anything with the sound.
It's terrible. I don't want to try it this
Yeah.
time. It's like mango chutney.
It's probably going to be really hard to hear over the camera, but any sound with S, you can hear a very screechy, unbalanced treble sound, which is unfortunate. It's something I never experienced from Apple. Usually they'd fix that before it's released, and it's something that's really annoying. Unfortunately, I think they could fix it with the software update. It's not going to be a huge deal very long, I don't think. But it's unfortunate. If you have a new iPhone 7 Plus and you want to fix that, you can fix that by going to settings and going to music and basically changing the EQ settings and decreasing the treble by selecting treble reducer, and that fixes the problem. But it's still a little unfortunate that you have to even go through those steps. Next complaint. I don't think it's a complaint. This is entirely up to the user. I like it. They got rid of the home button. It's now a sensor that uses taptic feedback.
On the contrary, they didn't actually get rid of the home button. What they did was they made it to where it's sealed, I think is what they
the waterproof feature. Dust and waterproof.
Instead of it being like a normal button, and if Frankie will put her fingers up here.
Yeah, you'll notice that this is a taptic feedback.
If she would move her hand out of the way for a second.
Sorry. But yeah, taptic feedback, you really can't hear it, but you can feel it. Hardware feedback, you can hear it. Hear it? So there's a difference. It's all preference. I personally like the taptic feedback because one of the biggest features about the iPhone 7 is it's waterproof. Dust and water, not waterproof, but dust resistant, water resistant. I believe it's IP67 or 65, one of those two numbers.
66 or 67.
Yeah. So there's definitely a benefit to having this, in my opinion, because now you don't have to worry about that sticky button syndrome.
And one of the things you also notice is that the earpiece jack is actually, or the earpiece opening is actually a little bit bigger because of the stereo speakers.
Yeah, and the stereo speakers, which we already covered, they do have an issue with the sounds, but it's a nice benefit. I do love stereo speakers. However, on a phone, it's really not that big of a deal, but it is nice when you're listening to like certain videos that use binaural sounds. You can tell the difference.
Therefore, you don't have to do this to hear your stuff because it is coming out of this one as well.
Yeah, so if you're playing a game, you cover that, which happens all the time. You always cover that speaker up. That won't be an issue anymore. You still have some volume, so that's a nice benefit. It's a very good phone. It's the best iPhone ever. Unfortunately, there's so much competition out there that being the best iPhone ever isn't necessarily going to cut it. I feel like Apple played it safe, and I feel like they really need, with the next generation, need to bring their game on because, from a phone that came out 6 months or at least 3 months prior to this phone to have better specs, as far as like benchmarks be damned, better specs as far as like feature specs wise, wireless charging, AMOLED screen, quad HD resolution, slimmer base, waterproof already. To have all these features and to have a headphone jack, it just kind of really shows its age. I don't think it's necessarily the software's or the phone's fault. It's just I think Apple played it safe with this design, and it's a great phone, best iPhone ever, but it really shows its age when compared to newer Android hardware, and that's a big deficit on this phone's behalf. Now, another new feature is with the camera, which we didn't cover yet. If you look at the camera, you notice it's a dual 12.1 megapixel camera lens, and that basically gives you a it simulates a hardware zoom, lets you go up to 10x zoom, and it has a quad flash now. However, I was a little disappointed. I was expecting more from it. It was one of my most anticipated features about this phone, and I was really expecting a lot for this phone. Maybe I was being a little bit too... I was being a little bit... Yeah.
I didn't actually know they put that on there.
Yeah, they did. I was very excited about this feature, and unfortunately, I just didn't notice a huge difference. That second camera wasn't really utilized probably to its full potential. I'm sure with the next OS increase, I'll probably be adding more features to it, but I just haven't really, compared to the iPhone 6S, I don't see a huge difference in the camera quality. You still have that low light noise issue that you had in the 6S. It's a little better. And the camera is great quality, just like the 6S, but I just expected it to be significantly better, and all it really did was add that extended zoom, but if you use that zoom, you're still going to notice a lot of noise.
Well, that and the fact that this does not replace your higher end cameras. Just, as you can tell just from zooming in, it is a digital zoom. It is not like.
But look how
100%.
noisy. Look how noisy that.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
Yeah. It seems to be kind of a gimmick, and it really let me down compared to the S7 Edge that has pretty much the best camera you can get on a smartphone at the moment. And that's even compared to the new Google Pixel, which has an amazing smartphone camera. It really seems kind of last gen. I mean, yeah, it's a cool feature, but when it comes to the nuts and bolts of your pictures, wanting the clear picture, good low light shots, and noise reduction, it really let me down, unfortunately. But when it comes to speed on the phone, it's probably the fastest phone you'd probably ever use, on an iPhone. Fastest iPhone ever. It's very fast. It scores very high in the benchmarks, but it's limited to Apple's OS. And unfortunately, in my opinion, this is opinion, I don't really want to go into the opinion thing, but its limitations are the fact that it's locked down and you really can't do a whole lot compared to Android, but I think the people who are going to buy this aren't going to really notice that limitations. If you're an iPhone user and you have an iPhone 6, it's worth an upgrade. I think it is. If you have an iPhone 6, notice I didn't say 6S.
It's about 44 to 50% faster than an iPhone 6, give or take.
Yeah, I think it's worth the upgrade.
If you're on a 5S, it'd be worth the upgrade. If
you have a 5S, upgrade, no questions asked. If you have a 6, I still think it's worth the upgrade for the waterproof features, the new the dual speakers. I do like the new button. It's a lot better. You don't have to worry about that stickiness when you have dirty hands.
Keeping in mind that if you shatter this thing's screen, the darn screen alone is about $180 to replace.
Yeah, and that's why you probably want to get Apple Care Plus. It'll keep those repair costs down if you happen to be a little oopsies with your phones. But it's a great phone compared to an iPhone. But compared to the tough, stiff Android competition, especially with Google Pixel XL, for those, there's Android kind of offers something for everybody. If you want a real customized experience with lots of features, you have the Samsung phones. If you want pure Android, completely pure, you have the Google Pixel phones. And the speed is just, on Android phones these days, is amazing. And the features are amazing. And like I said, the design is on top of its game. And this, unfortunately, keeping it safe, playing it safe with your design, is really starting to show this phone's age. And honestly...
Now, when she says keeping it safe, it still basically depends on what the user wants. If they want something that quote-unquote just works, this is a good way to go with it. If you're a power user like us, Android is pretty much a better way to go because you can do more with the phones, you can hack them, you can do whatever you want with them.
And I really don't want this to be an iPhone versus Android debate.
This is all depending on what the user wants.
I don't want to compare the two, and it's easy to get into that, but as far as iPhone, this is the best iPhone ever. However, that's not saying much because they played it safe. They could do a lot more with the iPhone. Apple has it in them to do something a lot better than this. This was amazing 3 years ago. This was amazing 2 years ago. But this design, with the little hardware features, being included, improvements being included, it's just not. It doesn't feel next gen. It doesn't feel like a new phone. That's the biggest. That's to say it as simple as that. When I got this phone, I didn't feel like I had a new phone. I wasn't excited about it because it felt just like my 6S. The little bit of new improvements weren't enough to really sell me on it. If you have a 6S, hold on to your 6S, and let's just hope that next year, depending on when you're watching this, let's hope in September Apple really brings it out and does something new, because this design is not cutting it.
Now, on a completely unrelated note, the iPhone 8, which is supposed to be coming out, I want to say mid next year, Apple is supposed to be doing a huge revamp to it, but who knows what they're planning on doing. I honestly, this phone is okay in my opinion. I'm nowhere near going to jump ship to it. I'm on a 6S Plus right now, which is exactly what I'm shooting the video off of, as you can probably hopefully tell because it's great quality. I'm not shooting in 4K, so don't try switching this over to 4K. Next year's iPhone is supposed to be faster, stronger, better, like always. but they're talking about curved displays. They're talking about all kinds of. They're just waiting to see what their next step is. I, for one, am not impressed with the current heading of where they're going with these phones because they're releasing a lot more software updates. They're doing a lot of bug fixes. They're not testing it as much, and I'm seeing a lot of issues with battery drain with my wife's phone, for instance. And I'm just hoping that Apple can do something new, original, that isn't just adding an extra camera to the freaking phone.
Throwing an extra speaker in there, putting a nice waterproof coating, and adding another camera. I mean, and of course faster processor and more RAM, but that's just, little updates that the end user doesn't really see, doesn't feel.
Now, I do want to mention one thing for those of you that might be confused. This is not a speaker grill. This is where the barometric pressure thingy is that is supposed to equate pressure inside of the phone. This is where the speaker is for the phone for the first portion, and then this is the other one. I don't know why their engineers decided that it would be a good idea, because I think this is a tricky way of making people think it's stereo when it's not, because this is the other stereo speaker or mono speaker on top of the other one, or however you want to classify it, but that is not an extra speaker. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. If you want more tech specs on it, you can always visit Apple's website, or we will try and see if we can post it on the YouTube channel for everybody to see, and we'll go from there. This is Tech Ninja signing off. Everybody have a great night and happy holidays.